Welcome back to part 2 of my conversation with Mai. Today's topic is trauma and its association with OCPD. Hey, everybody out there in Disorderland. Welcome back to part 2 of my collaboration with Mai. Mai is a psychology student here in Mexico. I say here in Mexico because I'm actually in Mexico City at the moment. We're not doing this though for social distancing reasons. We're still like 3 hours apart, but we had a really great introduction to why Mai is so passionate about OCPD and the topic of trauma and why it's important to her and why she's joining us on this channel. So if you haven't seen part 1 of the video, please go watch part 1 and catch up and then come back here and join us. All of the links to things that Mai's involved in are in the description of this video and the last video as well. Where we last left off was essentially Mai had given us a really good breakdown of traumatic events and trauma and the difference and kind of where they take you as you grow up and you become an adult and how they start impacting your life. And you wanted to talk about the symptoms of trauma so that the audience has a better idea of, I guess, what to look for and what might prompt them to go seek out some treatment. So I'll let you pick up where you left off. I think you had talked about the first symptom, and I'll just let you take it from here.
Okay. Yes, I have a good list of symptoms. I like to say some of them because some of them, it might be easy to not notice them, because sometimes when you've been living your whole life suffering from something, you don't know it's not normal. You may even believe everyone suffers from it. So, relational difficulties. That is something so important when you have trauma, that you start having many difficulties in getting involved with other people, even just talking or giving that first step of trying to talk, finding out what you want to say. Maybe it's not that you can't get relationships. Maybe it's not that you can't, but you don't want to, and you don't know why you don't want to. Maybe that might be a symptom. Also, low self-esteem or physical dysphoria, like feeling like you don't like your body, you don't like yourself. Maybe you think too much about why you are ugly or why you are not nice, you don't look nice. Maybe that's something that happens, that passes through your mind. A lot of guilt and shame, that is feeling constantly guilt for things that maybe you should feel guilty, but maybe you shouldn't feel this guilty. Maybe you are someone that constantly is feeling guilty about many things in a very powerful way. Also, dissociation. The dissociation is like the main symptom. It appears mostly in severe cases, but it can appear in less severe cases. For example, my case, I consider it not being severe. I consider it medium, maybe. And well, before that, I want to explain. Dissociation is when your conscious mind is at one place and some other part of your mind is at some other place. So it dissociates. For example, it happens to me that when I'm having a conversation, my mind just goes somewhere else and I start like daydreaming in my mind, but I don't want to. I don't want to do it. My mind just does it. Why it happens? Because when you're a child, your brain, as I said before, doesn't know how to deal with the stress. So what your brain does is he tries to distract you. So the brain tries to make your conscious mind go away and keep a certain part of your mind so that you can be physically working and functioning, but your brain is somewhere else, so that you actually don't have to process that trauma, and the trauma stays hidden in your brain. So when you are in your adult life, already in a safe place and all that, your brain still has that still used to do that. So he's gonna keep on doing it. So if you feel like you get distracted too much, maybe you find yourself fantasizing a lot, or you feel like you're trying to accomplish something but your mind just slips away and you don't have control of it, it might be dissociation. Also, trouble regulating emotions. That is that you actually can't decide whether you show or not an emotion. We cannot control exactly what we feel, but we do can control how we express it and the way that we let the others know, the way that we communicate it. But if you're having a hard time deciding how, when, and with whom to communicate your emotions, maybe you have a problem with regulating your emotions and it can be because of trauma. Also, a sense of hopelessness, loss of meaning. That is the last one. Um, it sounds like depression a little bit, but it's more like feeling that you don't have a motivation. You don't have a reason why keep doing this. It's as if you turn around and saw your life and you would be like, why am I doing this if I don't have a good reason to keep on doing this? That's another of the symptoms. So if you find yourself um, feeling like you might have some of these symptoms, it would be really good that you look out for help so that the psychologist that treats you or the psychiatrist can tell you the real reason why it's happening, how can they help you. Maybe if there's medicine in the way, can be very helpful, or if you don't want medicine, you can just stick to therapy, but it will always be helpful to look out for help.
That's, that's a big part of why, you explained in the last video, you're passionate about this topic. These things are incredibly hard to identify ourselves, and it's not a great idea to self-diagnose. So all of the things that you're describing individually could potentially be from a traumatic event that led to trauma, or they could be genetic. There's a lot of different things to unpack, but I think the main thing here is if you are experiencing these, or if you're experiencing multiple symptoms, and any one of these by themselves is going to be highly unpleasant. So if you are feeling these things, the best thing that you can do is get in front of a therapist.
Also, I would like to explain why it might take a while for you to find the right therapist. I think people hear often that it takes a while, but many times you don't know why. And the main reason is because your therapist has to know you, has to get to know you actually well. So it might take a good number of sessions for him to actually know where you're standing, what are your main issues, what are your goals, how can he work with you, what you do like in therapy and what you don't like. So that's the first reason. The second reason that I was given, and I think it's very rational. My doctor told me that in order to diagnose a personality disorder, they have to clean out your personality from other disorders. They have to clean it out so that you stay with the main personality disorder that is you. Yes, so that is another reason, another thing that happens as well with trauma. They have to clean out all of the other disorders that are around there so that they can say, okay, your main issue is trauma. So that is one of the reasons. And also because each therapist, it doesn't matter if they do the same, each one works different. So for you, it might be wonderful to have this therapist, Jim, but maybe Jake um, is better for your friend. He's so awesome for your friend, but for you, Jake wasn't right. Even you think that Jake doesn't do a good job, but maybe for your friend, he does an excellent job. So keep looking. I mean, never give up on yourself. Keep looking for help because you're gonna find it. You're gonna find like the right fit for you. It just does take a little bit of time.
That's super, super, super excellent advice. One of the things that people might not necessarily realize when they're looking for a therapist is that you're not looking for the most qualified, the person with the most degrees that went to the most prestigious school. And a lot of people contact me through the channel and are having difficulty finding the right therapist, and they don't know why they're having such a hard time. Some people believe it's the OCPD itself because it's kind of baked in to be resistant to therapy. But one of the key things that you should be looking for when you're looking for a therapist, and personality is actually a very, very crucial component of finding the right therapist. You are going to be spending a lot of time talking to this person, telling them extremely personal things, and you're not going to be willing to do that. You're not going to be willing to open up unless this is somebody that you actually get along with, that you have respect for, you enjoy the time that you're with them, you like their personality. And I didn't know that for many, many years. I knew that I couldn't find the right fit, but I just thought I needed somebody that had treated 100 people with OCPD and they knew it inside and out. And that wasn't the case. That wasn't remotely the case. It really came down to finding somebody that they got me, and in some sense I got them, and we had a very comfortable therapist-patient relationship. So I'm glad that you brought that up. I think that it's going to be a subject of a future video where I really do a deep dive into that, because it's kind of probably the number one question I get. And what number one or number two question I get is, where do I find help, or how come I can't find the right help? Going back to trauma, and as it relates to OCPD, of course, not everybody that has OCPD is experiencing trauma, and definitely not everybody that is experiencing trauma or has gone through a traumatic event ends up having OCPD, but there is a lot of crossover. So far, with the schooling that you've done and the reading that you've done, do you have any particular beliefs or theories on why OCPD tends to come out of trauma?
Yes, I have my own creative theory.
Okay.
Well, first off, we have to understand that when you pass through trauma that has to do with the human factor, it's gonna be even harder to treat, and it's gonna be a stronger disorder. Why? And what is the human factor? The human factor is betray. If someone that was supposed to take care of you, your caregiver, betrays you, you as a child, you don't know what that means. Your brain can't process it. So it's like your brain is like, this person, I trust her and she's supposed to take good care of me. But at the same time, this person is hurting me, is making me feel bad. But I need this person. I can't get away from her. And also this part of the brain is like, we have to get away from her. She's dangerous. So this is like a paradox in the brain, that the brain, when it's a child, he cannot solve it. You feel betrayed by that person. You used to admire, or you still admire that person. You follow her. After all of these things that happen in your brain that become a paradox, your brain has to decide whether this person is a bad person or I am the bad person. Mostly, with most children, what the brain decides is that I am the bad one. I do things wrong. I am not good enough. So how can I become good enough? By being perfect, by doing everything the way that that person wants me to do it, by doing things in a way that I am going to do it so perfectly and so good that nothing bad can happen. And that is like the part of OCPD that I see that starts to develop in the childhood. But what happens when you're an adult, or you're starting to be an adult? As a young adult, I can say that we have a lot of pressure from older adults because they believe that when you're 30 or 20, 25, maybe, you should already have your house and be almost getting married and doing lots of stuff. So it's very stressful having to do all that society is telling you to do. Also, the world is not a very friendly place for a person that is mentally ill. So you're always struggling with things that you have to do or don't have to do. So what your brain realizes is, since I have trauma and I am having such a hard time with all of these symptoms that I have, that are a big number of symptoms, since I'm having so much trouble with it, I am going to start doing things the way that they should be always. so that there's no space for mistake, so that there's no space for me to feel uncomfortable, for me to not being able to control myself. Also, when you are traumatized, you develop this difficulty of controlling yourself, even from your body, like
Mm-hmm.
maybe you can't control your weight,
Sure.
maybe you can control your bladder, maybe you can control certain pains that you have in your body.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the emotional part, of course, we know that everyone that is mentally ill,
Mm-hmm.
well, we can control well our emotions and our brain. So all of that, it turns out to be the brain trying to find a balance. And since the brain can't find a balance, well, he decides that he's gonna try to make something better than a balance,
Mm-hmm.
and that is perfection. So that is how I see that trauma can lead to OCPD.
There's generational components, there's cultural components, there's a lot of different things that could be these little traumatic events, or also be interpreted as betrayal. And I thought it's a really good word for explaining what a traumatic event is. And I think it's also important, in my experience, to understand, because I think betrayal, you think of maybe like a Disney movie or something, and somebody that's been pretending to be the good guy all along ends up being,
Right.
the bad guy, and you kind of view betrayal as this evil word, or something that has a very, very strong negative connotation. And the problem with that is, if you look at studies on the low end, there's a lot of studies that say probably 1% of the population has OCPD, which is just mind boggling, because so few people are diagnosed and so few people identify with it. And then there's other studies that put it anywhere from like 2 to 8%, which I think is a stretch. But you imagine 8% of the population having OCPD. Does that mean that 8% of the population is evil because somebody had to betray that young person in order for them to develop the disorder? And of course not. So these betrayals can be things that are completely accidental. There's so many people that have kids all around the world that are just not prepared for it. And so that was one of the things I struggled with, because the betrayals that I discussed in therapy were betrayals of people that I still love and I still respect to this day. And this is the whole reason you need to be in therapy, to process these things and to come out the other side, because those things, you have a hard time aligning those things. So this person betrayed me, and now I'm all messed up in the head because of it. But that betrayal intentional? Was it malicious? Was this person a bad person? And quite often the case is no. This person did the best with what they had. They raised you maybe how they were raised, or they just didn't have, let's say, the finances to put enough food on the table for you. That's an extremely, or could be an extremely traumatic event. Betrayal is a very accurate descriptive word for what causes a traumatic event. But I think it's important to know that there are many, many different layers to betrayal, and many times they're not intentional. And so when you start to learn this as an adult, if you're somebody that has experienced trauma, you then have to decide, am I going to forgive this person? Am I going to hold it against them? Am I going to continue to have this person in my life? Are they continuing to cause trauma? Are they still part of the problem? And so there's a lot to unpack, and doing that with a licensed, trained professional is really the only way that you're going to come out of this with a healthy brain. And also, you're going to have the right outlook and the right perspective on the people that are in your life or were in your life. And I don't think that's generally something that you're going to be able to figure out on your own, because there's so many layers to it. But I do want to stay on topic. So is there anything else that you would like to discuss in regards to trauma while I have you on the channel?
Yeah, maybe I would like to talk about what you can do for yourself right now.
Sure.
Um, Besides the basic, no, we know that the basics are eating healthy, sleeping well, drinking water, exercising. But I want to talk about what we usually as therapists do when a person is starting to heal from trauma. So the first, like the super first thing you need to do is be in a safe place, in a place where you know that you are calm, that you feel secure, that you have a support system. Also, finding a good support system is really, really helpful. You have no idea. It can be one person, it can be
Yeah.
your neighbor, it can be someone that maybe he's not your friend, but someone that you know that could help you in case that you need it for anything. Maybe you're having a crisis, but always try to have someone that you can go to in case that you need it. Also, educate yourself. Really, you don't know how much that helps. That helps you educate yourself. It helps you understand what is going on with you. And once you understand it, and also once you have a name for it, it feels a little bit better. And you start finding out things about your own brain. Just because you read something and how the brain works, you by reading that, you start realizing other things that make the functioning of the brain just by observing yourself. So that is a really a good advice as well, to observe yourself. And if you can have a journal where you write how you felt that day, what you did, how were things. Maybe I felt bad today, but I don't know why. Maybe trying to be a detective with yourself, investigate why today I turn out to feel kind of angry at the end of the day. Maybe it was because I didn't eat at the right time. And because this person told me this and I didn't like this. So you start realizing where your emotions take each other. And that will help you a lot when you get to your therapist and you tell him all the information that you have about yourself. Because even though your therapist, he's the expert in mental health, you are the expert of your own feelings,
Absolutely. Yeah.
emotions, and thoughts. You know what works for you, you know yourself. So it is important that you know that when you go to a therapist, you're gonna work together. It's a complete teamwork.
And it happened again. So it's really simple. The camera battery just didn't have enough juice for the length of time that we talked. I've since purchased a continuous source of power for my DSLR, but unfortunately, it wasn't in time for my next video. So be forewarned, it's gonna happen one last time, but that should be it. No more distractions moving forward. So let's get back to the chat. Absolutely. And I think that there's a component here that is uncomfortable for a lot of people, and that's the fact that whatever happened to you, it probably wasn't fair. I mean, especially if you were a child, which a lot of most often is the case with these traumatic events. Not always, but a lot of the times, whatever happened to you, it was unfair, and that's something that you will have to process and work through in therapy. And part of that working through, it requires you to take some responsibility, which is also unfair. And so then you kind of have to figure out how to align those things. There's kind of two groups of people that I talk to. There's the people that are actively in therapy, they're actively trying to work through the issues that they have. And there's this other group of people that are just living with whatever disorder they have, and they're clearly not happy, and they're clearly not at peace with themselves or the way their life is headed. But the problem on this side, right, is that everything is unfair, and they want to be given the solution, and they have every right to feel that way. And I think all of us have felt that way at some point, that everything is so unfair, and at some point something good needs to happen to turn things around. But unfortunately, that isn't how it works, right? You have to put in the work, and it's not fair that you have to put in the work, but it does require a lot of work. Therapy is not just going and talking for an hour. There's a lot that's involved in that. You come out of therapy sessions sometimes feeling completely drained because you had to go through some of the trauma, right? And there's other times where you're given tasks or exercises or different things that are going to be beneficial to you, and you've got to go out there and do them. And even things like diet and exercise, those can be really difficult, but also very, very good for you. So I think it's really important, to end this video on on a positive note. So with what you said, as far as showing yourself some love and taking care of yourself, doing things like journaling and being more self-aware, those are really, really important things on the path to recovery. And I want to see everybody on this side come over here. And I'm not trying to scare you off when I say it's a lot of work. One of the things is I know people your age that have gone through a lot of therapy, people my age, and I know people that are 20, 30, 40 years older than myself, and it took them that long to enter into therapy or find the right therapist, and they're living happy, calm, peaceful, satisfying lives. And that's a point that I really want to hit home on. The point is, it's never too late. I talk to people all the time that are suffering with major depression, with a host of other things, and they feel like, well, I've spent half of my life feeling this way, so it's too late. It's like, well, what if you've got another 40 years left to live? Do you want to feel this way for another 40 years? Of course you don't. Even if you've got a year left, wouldn't you want that to be the best possible year that it could be? So I want to thank you, Mai, for joining me on the channel. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, and I want to thank you for coming on the channel today.
No, really, thank you for the space. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to try to raise the voice and have many people hear about trauma. I hope everyone who are watching liked it and keep on educating yourself about this subject.
Hey guys, so this is the second ever Raw Reactions. I have Mai here with me today, so you're going to get 2 answers for the price of 1. If this happened to be your question that you sent in anonymously, please contact me through the channel, because I have some books on perfectionism and books on OCPD, and whenever I pick somebody's question, I'm gonna send you out one of those books. So if this is your question, please contact me, and let's get into the question, because I want to make this a short segment. So somebody wrote in, they said, I just have a question. I'm a teen and I wouldn't self-diagnose and say I have OCD or OCPD. And my reasoning for this is because I usually have to wash my bedding once a week. And since the coronavirus, it's decreased. But if I hang out with my friends, I have to take a shower afterwards and wash my hair at least twice. But it could range from 2 to 7 times. I also recently got a piercing, so it's caused me to constantly wash my hands to the point where they bleed. And if I have friends over, I have to wash my bedding, vacuum my floor, and take a shower. But I still don't know what could be wrong with me, and I'm not sure if it's an anxiety thing or could possibly be OCD or OCPD. So Mai, I'll let you give your thoughts on this really quick.
First off, the important thing is not to decide whether you have OCD or OCPD. No. The first important thing is to ask yourself, do I need help? Is this causing me trouble? Is this making me feel uncomfortable? If this is making you feel uncomfortable, if you don't like it, if you don't understand why you're doing it, if you feel like maybe you shouldn't be doing it, or you're having questions or doubts, and it's making you feel awkward, maybe you should check it out. So the first thing to think is not, what is my disorder? The first thing to think is this a disorder? Is this something that needs my complete care?
The only thing I'll add is I was talking earlier on in the video about the number 1 question being, about finding a therapist. And the number 2 question is generally somebody sending me a list of, I guess, symptoms and then asking me if I think it's OCPD. I'm not in a position to diagnose anybody. And I always say that in my response. And Mai eventually will be in a position to diagnose somebody, but isn't at the moment. So yeah, I think your advice is 100% spot on. Do these sound like possible OCD or OCPD symptoms? Yeah, they definitely sound like they could fall into the world of either or both of those disorders. But again, it sounds like these symptoms are causing you problems. If you're ruminating on them and you're writing in, I think that should be enough to tell you that talking to somebody is a good idea. So I don't know what your age is. Maybe you have the option of even talking to a guidance counselor. Talking to a trusted loved one is a good idea. But ideally, if you really are having a hard time, getting professional help is always going to be the best course of action. And I hope I hope that's accessible to you. Thank you so much for writing in, and we'll answer your questions in the next Raw Reactions. If you have a question that you'd like to send in anonymously, the email is rawreactions@ocpd.org, and that will be in the description. Thanks again for sending in this question. Thank you so much, Mai, for being a part of My Life in Debris. It is really important to me that we feature other voices on this channel and not just my own. That said, I'm excited to announce that next week we will have another special guest. I'll see you guys then.